When someone has been fired unexpectedly, they're usually in shock and disbelief and don't know what to do. So they're usually spiraling out of control, thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? My paycheck's gone. So it's a little overwhelming and shocking at first. Many clients come to us and they share a similar story. And what that story looks like is they dedicated their whole life, their whole career to this particular employer, working extensive hours, not just 8 hours a day, extensive hours, including overtime. And they put everything they had into performing their job. And then all of a sudden, something happens and they're fired. And not only are they without a paycheck, and wondering, what am I going to do? But their feelings are hurt because they're like, well, I thought I was doing a good job. I thought this employer was like family. I thought this employer was going to take care of me. I was going to retire from this place. And now everything's taken away from them and they have to figure out what their next step is, not only with where they're going to work, but where are they going to go? How are they going to get money? What's next? So it's really overwhelming, but also emotional because their personal feelings were also tied to the job. It wasn't just a financial security, it was also an emotional attachment. So you're dealing with both money, monetary, and then the feeling. Oftentimes people question whether they did something wrong. Most of the time they think they did not do anything wrong, or that whatever's being accused of, or if they're being accused of something, they may feel like, wait, I'm wrongfully accused. Oftentimes they really just don't understand why they've been terminated. And so we have to help them navigate through those feelings and their fact pattern, really look at the case and what's going on and see if maybe something did go wrong to where we could legally pursue something for them. If someone's been wrongfully terminated legally, we're looking for protected activity. Did this employee engage in protected activity? And then as a result of that, they've been terminated. We're also looking at public policy. Did this termination violate some public policy, which would result in an actionable wrongful termination in violation of public policy? There are public policies implemented that protect employees from wrongfully being terminated, and that could be anti-discrimination laws. So an employee can't be terminated on a basis of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. An employee who comes forward and complains of safety hazards in the workplace and then is fired because of that, that would be a violation of public policy. There's public policies in place that protect employees, and that employees must be provided with a safe and healthful work environment. So if an employee complains about that and then resultantly they're terminated, that could be a wrongful termination in violation of public policy. There's a number of public policies that we look at, and if an employee is fired and it violates that, we could view that as a wrongful termination case. Being treated unfairly might mean that there's a dispute between employer and employee or coworkers. And because two coworkers can't get along, an employer might make a decision that, okay, you know what, this isn't a good fit, and we're going to have to move forward with your termination. That might be an unfair termination, as opposed to an illegal termination would be more of an employee engaging in protected activity where they're complaining about being harassed or discriminated against on a basis of a protected characteristic, and the employer just doesn't want to deal with it and they fire that employee. That would be actionable wrongful termination, as opposed to just an employer making a legitimate decision to terminate. That's not actionable. And then we have where an employer is making a decision with discriminatory or retaliatory motives. That may be actionable wrongful termination. Some situations that might feel wrong in the workplace would be bullying, mobbing, isolation, where a group of employees are singling out another. That might feel bad, might feel unfair, but those employees might not be targeting that particular employee because of a protected characteristic. And so while it doesn't feel good in the workplace and it feels toxic and hostile, it might not be actionable. On the flip side, some situations that are major red flags would be derogatory, offensive comments being targeted and made to a particular employee. It could be offensive jokes. It could be sexual harassment where there's groping involved or sexual advances. That would be a situation where it could be actionable. The biggest warning signs that a situation could be a wrongful termination claim is typically where the employee is making complaints and nothing's being done by the employer. And all of a sudden, following those complaints close in time, that employee is terminated. That's a red flag or a signal that this could be a wrongful termination case. Retaliation typically shows up before termination by being singled out or isolated, ignored. Your schedule changes, you're being disciplined, you're being written up for everything. An employee can usually feel that they're a target and that termination is just on the cusp, like it's coming. They can feel it. That's very typical of what we see leading up to a wrongful termination case. There are signs. Discrimination plays a role in wrongful termination cases because if an employee is feeling as though they're being discriminated in the workplace and they make a complaint, and then as a result of that complaint, they're terminated, they tie together. So an employee could have a claim for discrimination as well as wrongful termination in violation of public policy as well. Documentation from the employer that tends to stand out is emails that don't coincide with what actually took place. So an employee could go to an employer, management or HR, and make a complaint, and somebody in management or HR shoots back an email, and that email does not reflect what was actually complained about or what actually took place. That's a red flag. If there's write-ups that don't make sense, or if there's write-ups that look like an employee's getting written up for anything and everything, while similarly situated other employees aren't getting written up for the same conduct, that's another red flag. If an employee is experiencing excessive write-ups, which are unwarranted or unusual as compared to their coworkers, that could be something to look out for. The first three things that an employee should do after they have been terminated is collect all their data, their information, call an attorney, and make sure that they're paid on time. If an employee has been terminated, they're entitled to be paid on the date of termination. Documentation is vital to any case because it's your evidence, it's your story, it supports what you're saying. So it's very important to have documentation in place. So we're looking for emails, text messages, photographs, something to tell your story. Employees should be very cautious about signing documents upon termination. If they are presented with a severance agreement, they should not sign it immediately. They should consult with an attorney. That is vital. Most of the time, the employee is not going to understand the language in that severance agreement, and they need the appropriate advice from an attorney to go through that agreement, understand it before they sign it. Employees should avoid spiraling out of control, contacting other employees, talking too much about the situation. Sometimes I think it's better to consult with a professional as opposed to calling everybody you worked with, trying to figure out what happened. If an employee feels like they have been wrongfully terminated, they should immediately reach out to an employment law attorney for advice. Waiting too long to reach out to an employment law attorney when you feel like you've been wrongfully terminated could hurt your case because of statute of limitations. There are certain statute of limitations that give you only a certain amount of time to file a case, so you want to seek legal advice as soon as possible. Early guidance will help provide an employee with clarity and understanding what their rights are. So it's important not only for the individual to have someone to give them feedback and information, but also encourage them that, okay, this is what we're going to do. And now you get to move on with your life. You get to focus on what your next steps are, what your new employment journey is. And these are the tools that will get you there. I wish every employee knew that they have rights. They have employee rights, but they also have the right to work in a place that they feel happy. You have control over yourself and your destiny. And you have a right to work in a safe, healthful work environment. You have a right to be free from discrimination or harassment. You have a right to be treated fairly in the workplace and equally, and understand those rights. Go to work and know that you have protections.